Welcome to the Josh Bolton Show, where we dive into interesting and inspiring conversations. And now, your host, Josh Bolton.
Welcome, everybody. Today we have... Sorry.
You can just say today we have Diane Pleuss with Franchise, and some say she's the Rolls Royce of franchise consulting. Welcome, Diane.
Welcome. No, we're just going with that. We're just going with that as is. Thank you, Diane, for saving me on that one. So we were talking before I hit the record button about the different things she specializes in, the franchising, the investing, the type of franchising genres, right?
Industries, you might say.
Yeah. And then we're just going to go into different questions here and there. So, Diane, thank you again for saving my neck in the beginning. And please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, Josh and listeners. My name is Diane Pleuss with Franchise. And some people say it's the Rolls Royce of franchise consulting.
That's awesome. So where are you stationed at, city-wise?
Sure. I'm in the East Bay of San Francisco. However, I work with people nationally. So I've placed people from New York to Florida, the Midwest. I've even placed people in Alaska and Hawaii. I've worked with a few people internationally who have opened businesses in the U.S. because they wanted to get a visa. That doesn't happen very often, but a bit of that anomaly.
It's a fun, interesting customer, right?
Yes, I have to share that the very first person I helped into business was in Hawaii. And I quizzed that franchise company, even though it was huge. I mean, they had 1,000 units. And I said, now, I've got this great person in Hawaii. Are you sure? Can you confirm that he's going to get outstanding training and support? And they said to me, Diane, the man's in Hawaii. Don't you think our support staff is going to be fighting over who gets to go to Hawaii to support this new franchisee? And I went, oh, yes, I guess so.
They're paying me to go on vacation. I want to train them.
Yes.
That's awesome. So then how is San Francisco right now with COVID with you guys?
It is coming back. The Northern California was in lockdown for a long time, and we wore our masks, and I think we're quite prudent. So now we've come out of that, and we're hopefully staying clear of going back into it. Hopefully. So I think it looks optimistic, and everyone is cautious. We're fortunate that we have wonderful weather, so all the restaurants have outdoor seating area, and some of the outdoor events are now starting to resume.
Sorry, my little guy just going off. That's awesome. Where I'm in LA County, they've reinstated everything up to force mandate going back into your house kind of thing, like social distancing masks. And I'm just like, really, guys? Really? You're like the one, maybe two out of the whole state doing this? So, but that's just me. What is the trend you've been seeing with franchising, especially during COVID?
Well, during COVID, initially in March and April, many businesses, of course, took a hit because everyone was very scared and staying indoors. I am happy to report that many businesses have rebounded and did end up having very good years. Businesses that were deemed what's called essential services did extremely well. Mm-hmm. Those were usually businesses that weren't food, but provided needed services. So, for example, if your water heater breaks, you're still probably going to call the handyman franchise to have a technician come out to your home to help with the replacement of that water heater. So those types of things were still being done. Many times with a needed service, it's not something that can be done online or outsourced internationally, but people look at that from an investment standpoint and say the investment is lower. You can work out of a home office or probably a small office suite, and you can get into business faster. The margins are very attractive. So it's really a great business model and has proved to be exceptionally strong at this time.
Yes. No, that's the biggest one. The staying working from home or like a office rental space kind of thing is the biggest one I've been seeing with COVID, where you maybe have your employees stay home 90% of the time, and then we just meet at this, whatever the local rent a room place for offices are, for like our weekly or monthly meetings.
I'm sure. In fact, there are franchise companies in that space.
Probably.
And related to that, and this is really a real estate play where the franchisee will lease, let's say, 5,000 to 10,000 square feet, divided into small office suites, and lease each suite to a hairstylist professional. And post-COVID now, many times people like to go to those individual suites where their stylist now is, rather than to a salon that is more in that group atmosphere. So that's a business that is doing exceptionally well now post-COVID.
Right. Yeah, that makes the most sense. And from your perspective and your experience, do you think the group gathering, like concerts, hair salons, nails, do you think that's going to be more individualistic, or do you think we're eventually going to get back to the group gatherings?
I think that will probably be determined by statistics.
Okay.
And what is happening in the hospitals, or if they improve or have additional cures or vaccines with that. But I think they will watch the statistics closely and determine it based on that.
Awesome. So tell me why someone would want to buy a franchise over starting their own business.
Well, franchising is not right for everyone. So there's no one size fits all. People that look at a franchise business want actually many things. They want the independence. They want their hard work and effort to come back and benefit them and their family rather than shareholders somewhere. They want that flexibility that they can schedule a vacation when they would like, or that they can coach their kids in Little League or attend their kids' dance recital. They're still going to work hard, but they have more control over their schedule. Many times when people look at a franchise, they want the systems and infrastructure, all the support behind it. Sometimes I work with very smart, proficient people, and I will ask them, why do you want to start a franchise instead of doing an independent business? And usually they'll chuckle and say, well, we don't want to create everything we could, but how long is that going to take? How much money is that going to take? If I do a franchise, I know what I'm getting. I can be down the road further and faster. I want that head start. I appreciate the systems and infrastructure that they developed. I appreciate the IT platform, the marketing that they've done. I can review it and look at all of it before I make that decision. I can talk to existing owners and see how they're doing and how do my skills and goals compare to theirs. So there's just a greatly increased comfort level knowing that you can check all these things out in advance. And a franchise is pretty transparent if you will but take the time to do a good investigation and ask those important questions.
So what would some of those important questions be?
Oh, some of those important, there's actually many questions, and okay. I have a whole sheet of questions, and usually I break it down by category. So I'll have questions related to getting started, questions related to training, to support, to the investment, to return, to the lifestyle, so that people can go through that. And usually they start with some of the easier questions concerning training and support, so they can build rapport with that existing franchisee. And then they can switch to some of the questions regarding investment and return and how they're running their business. But it's enormously helpful to be able to speak to existing owners as well as any past owners that are no longer with the company.
So as far as some of the questions involving the training guidelines, what are the basics they would need to know? Like someone like me, where I eventually may want to buy a franchise, but I'm not in the arena. I other than right now, I know it would to call you in the future. If I was trying to bootstrap this, I wouldn't know what to ask, kind of thing. So what were some of them you would recommend to people?
Sure. One of the advantages, again, of going through a franchise investigation process is that it's a process. So most companies will schedule hour-long calls, and they'll cover a variety of topics. Usually the first call is what I call an A to Z call or a soup to nuts call. It talks about how the franchise got started, talks about their management team, the vision and where they're going and what their process looks like. The second call usually covers things like training, support, advertising, marketing, employees, all of those types of things. Then they'll go into what we call unit economics, where they'll talk about the investment and the return. They'll review the legal document known as the franchise disclosure document. Then they will give the person the green light, assuming that they have the basic information to talk to existing franchisees. And that can be done either in a group call or one by one, usually depending upon the franchise company. Finally, if the person likes the franchise and the franchise also likes the candidate, because it's a two-way street, you would be looking at the franchise company and they would be looking at you to make sure that you have the skills, the abilities, desire to be a stellar business owner. Then they will invite you to something that we call a meet the team day or a confirmation day, and really verifies everything that you've learned up until that time. And if both parties are in agreement, usually the franchise company would like to then award you a franchise, and then it will be your decision to accept or not. And up until that whole time, your primary responsibility is to learn about the franchise company. So it's not, am I going to buy it or not? It's let's learn about it. What questions can we ask? What do we need to know? That's the focus on that investigation process.
I did not realize it was such a long dance or so many hoops to jump through. Because like when I was working security for a while, I would go to like an Arco, and I actually met the owner, and it was just one of those. He's like, "Yeah, this is like my 6th gas station," and I'm like, "Oh, you make it sound so easy." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, at a certain point, you just call the company, and you're like, "Okay, here you go." I didn't realize it was the first song and dance, the more important part. It's like once you're in the club, you're good.
Yes. Many times people will do multiple units, and there's certainly efficiency in that. And once you know how to run one or open up one, it's certainly much easier to open up your second or third, and you have economies of scale as well. So depending upon the franchise that you go with, sometimes a franchisee could start with one, expand it to 3 to 5 to 10 to 50 to 100. Sometimes that's also where you'll see how generational wealth is passed down from one generation to another. A person has amassed many units, and they can then hand that down to children or possibly even grandchildren.
Yeah.
We call those folks empire builders.
Yes,
and
they
that's
are.
One of the questions that I ask a candidate is, what are their goals? Do they want to be a single unit owner, or would they like to, at some point in time, own multiple units or many units?
Yeah. And so I'm curious, it's not far out of reach, but let's say I want to run, like I call you, we get 5 franchisees going. What are do some of them ask you, do you have any people in mind that I could use for management, or is that something I would have to go figure out?
Usually what they'll recommend is where they've had success in recruiting employees. They will usually have a template that you can follow as far as text. They'll have guidelines as far as salary. They'll talk about how to retain employees. So you would be doing the hiring yourself, but you would come in really prepped, knowing who you're looking for and how to go about finding that person.
That's
and
interesting.
Some franchise companies will be very influential in that. And sometimes, particularly when it comes to the trades, for example, if you're looking at a plumbing franchise, they will be much more involved in helping you find the plumbers or the technicians for some of those service-based businesses.
Well, that's good. So like hypothetically, I could give you a call and say, hey, I want to get a Mike Diamond's plumber going kind of thing. Because I'm assuming they're franchised at this point.
Well, there's lots of service-based franchises, and people usually don't even think of this, but there are franchises for roofing, for insulation, gutters, irrigation, flooring, window covering, painting, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, handyman. Those are ones that come to mind right off the top. And because of the pandemic and people staying home, many times people were saying, oh, we should replace our window coverings, or we need new carpeting or flooring, or let's spend some money on lawn care or pool care. Pet care, of course, is another franchise. So these home service-based businesses have done extremely well during this time, and services could be provided and fulfilled.
So then what would be the initial upfront investment? Let's say I want to go with the plumbing service. What would be the basics? We were talking before I even hit the record button, and I just realized I don't even have the money. But maybe someone that does have the money, you could help them out.
Sure, and we'll talk about how people approach funding as part 2 of your question.
Perfect, thank you.
So part 1 talks about, or let me mention, fees involved. So a franchise will have a one-time franchise fee, which gains you access to the training and the system. It can be as low as $15,000. It can also be 6 figures. Generally, the average franchise fee now ranges between $50,000 and $65,000. Again, a one-time fee that is due when the person signs the franchise agreement.
Right.
We also talk in terms of total investment. And we know that when the person goes into business, that they'll need to attend training. That may include a flight, that may include hotel, it may include meals there. They need to upgrade their laptop or upgrade their phone. So all of those costs the franchise company will list. They never want you to be undercapitalized.
Right.
They may have a recommendation for a vehicle that they would encourage you to lease. They could have a recommendation for some office space, and they'll give some parameters as far as cost per square foot and size of the office. And many times those can be small offices to start. For example, if a person is interested in a senior care franchise, and these aren't the ones where you have the large buildings and seniors live there, but the senior care franchise, usually the owner hires caregivers, is involved in the community, and disperses the caregivers to people that need those services provided in the home. Those services are usually dispatched from an office location. So it can be a small office with a few people to start. And as the person hires and scales and gets more caregivers and has more clients, they will continue to add more caregivers. They may need to move to a larger office. But if I'm hiring the caregivers, I'm just concerned about having good people that do what they're supposed to, that are well-trained, that show up on time. I don't particularly care where that office is located. So you can start in something that's small, that's convenient for your caregivers. And as your business grows and scales, you can move to a larger office. And that's really smart because then you've got revenue to support the growth of your business.
Yeah. And that's the key for any business is you want to make sure you're getting enough revenue. So when you do grow, you can still sustain that growth. And then of course, you got to up your revenue. But yeah, that's the biggest trick. So then how would someone, let's say hypothetically, someone like me, how would I go about funding since you mentioned that was your part too?
Thank you very much for keeping me on track. There are a variety of ways that people fund a business. Certainly, you can look at an SBA loan, and many people go that route. I will simply mention that because there is so much interest in franchising right now, that there are many people applying for SBA loans. So usually we start that process sooner than later and allow a good 30, if not 60 days for that processing to be facilitated. The SBA likes to chuckle and say the S in SBA, while it stands for Small Business Administration, it does not mean that it's speedy. So that's one way. Another way that a lot of people look at funding is to use retirement funds, for example, 401k funds that they may have accumulated over their years of working in a job. Most people aren't aware that you can roll that into your own business without any penalty or tax consequences. In fact, there are even some tax advantages. It's not something that a person can do on their own. There are companies that specialize in that. And again, I'm happy to make introductions to that. We're taught to be very cautious about using retirement funds. And I'm always, when I work with candidates, I'm always respectful of their decision. But I do encourage them when they're talking to other owners as part of the validation to ask that existing owner, how did you fund your business? Many times people heard, gee, I funded it by using some of my retirement funds because it's equity funding rather than debt funding. So I've had people come back and say, we don't know for sure that we want to do it, but we at least want to learn about it. And I think that's a very smart decision. So get educated, talk to your accountant, and then you can make that smart and savvy business decision on funding.
Absolutely. So are there other paths other than the SBA or the retirement 401k, like asking family and friends to tip in kind of thing?
Sure. And that's known as F&F, family and friends.
Okay.
So sometimes people want to ask family and friends and hold them accountable and know that they will invest. Other times they won't. Many times people will have accumulated a certain amount of money that they feel comfortable investing. Usually the franchise company will have certain financial requirements. They will want you to have a certain amount liquid and a certain net worth. If we're looking at a service-based business, such as a handyman or a senior care, generally a total investment there could range, let's say, from $75,000 to $150,000, and that includes a minimum of 3 months of working capital. So you may have to pay your employees before the client would pay you. So that's part of that working capital. If we're looking for something that's brick and mortar, it's going to be a little more expensive. The good news there is there are a lot more locations available. There are some very advantageous tenant improvements, and some people are getting great lease rates. So it's a very favorable time to look at that. Usually for that, we'd like to see at least 100,000 liquid and the capacity to borrow, let's say 200,000, because a total investment for something that's brick and mortar, including that 3 months of working capital, usually starts at about 300,000 and goes up from there.
Yeah. No, it's very true. I didn't realize, I actually didn't even think that you would have to have 3 months of capital because you may not even see your money for at least a month and a half kind of thing.
Again, the franchise company wants to make sure that you are successful. So they will cover all the things that you're going to need. And you may not need all of them. You may have, for example, a brother-in-law that could help with construction or whatever the case is. But you would be looking at that and you wouldn't be missing anything as far as permits or licensing or things like that, that sometimes when you start an independent business, you simply don't know. So here you're going forward with all of that in mind. And again, usually you're not writing out checks for those types of things on day one.
Right.
Keep in mind that there are some discounts as well in franchising. Franchise companies love veterans because they have management experience and they're used to following systems and very good operationally. So many companies will give them a discount off the franchise fee, which is a huge benefit. I worked with one man who was a sergeant major, and he got $10,000 off his franchise fee.
Wow.
And he was very pleased. And when he went to training to the confirmation day in advance, they recognized that he was a veteran, and everyone stood up and applauded and gave him credit, and also credit to the franchise company for being generous. I will say also that franchise companies know that in general, veterans do extraordinarily well. So they welcome them with open arms into their system.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I was actually talking to a Navy SEAL vet a couple of weeks ago, and it was just one of those I jokingly told him, like, the way you strategize and think, it's perfect for a business. Like, the only thing is your air quote business was warfare, but now that you're free, you have the same strategies. Instead of the person on the other side of the field, it's now like my opponent is the shop across the street from me. Like, how do I beat him? And I said, as a SEAL, that's dangerous because you're going to figure out how to beat him.
Yes, many times they have a great work ethic. They have leadership skills. They are wonderful problem solvers.
Oh, yeah.
So if a situation presents itself, they're going to think, how can I solve this? They can certainly call the home office. They can call other franchisees, or they may simply, from their experience, be able to figure that out as well.
Oh, 100%. And that was the thing I was joking with him, because he has like 3 endeavors going on with him. And I'm like, dude, 3 sounds a little light for you. But
yes.
Yeah, it was just, that's interesting. I didn't think about the military vet. But yeah, now that you pointed out, that would actually make the most sense. Tactical for them, because you just follow my system and you're pretty much guaranteed success as long as we market correctly for you. That's interesting. So then.
Right. Also, a franchise appeals to those people who want to sign the front of the check and not the back of the check.
Yes. I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Because then there's all that stuff that comes with signing the back of the check.
Well, I mean, we all need employees, and as a business owner, we're going to be hiring employees, but the franchisee does want to have more control. They welcome that opportunity. They many times want to be involved in the community. They want to run that stellar business. They want to launch people in their careers. They want to be that good corporate citizen. And that many times is what is exciting to them and very fulfilling.
It is. So I'm curious then, this is just a thought that's been ticking in the back of my head. Do you own any franchises?
I do not. I worked for a franchise company.
Okay.
And then some of my colleagues were invited to join FranChoice. I was also invited to join FranChoice 16 years ago, and I absolutely love it. At the franchise company I was with, I was the director of marketing. Okay. So I was not in franchise development, but occasionally I would talk to candidates, and sometimes I would talk to the people and I think, oh, you would make a great franchise owner. And other times I would talk to people and I think, oh my, I don't think this is a good match for you. I sure hope you look at some other businesses. So what I very much love about being a franchise business consultant or matchmaker is that I can match that person to specific businesses that would be ideal for their goals, their skills, their interests. I don't have to force that round peg into that square hole. I can give them great options that hopefully any would work for them where they're located, that there's territory available. And then I don't care which one they choose because any of them should be good. And that's what I very much like to do.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, hypothetical, let's say I had the money and I called you up. What would be the first few questions to figure out what kind of franchise I would want?
I would want you to do a self-assessment.
Okay.
And think about your skills, your interests, your goals. Sometimes I'll work with a person and they will say, find me a business that's hot, that's growing quickly, that I can get in on the ground floor, but then I want to flip it and then I want to replicate that. So I want to get in and out quickly. Other times I'll work with someone and they'll say, I would love to be able to work with my spouse. I want to keep it ideally a long time. I might like to provide opportunities for my kids for their first jobs. Ideally, I would love to be able to hand it off to that next generation. I want to be able to grow and scale it. I'm going to make different recommendations depending upon what that person tells me as far as their goals, their skills, their interests. Some people want a franchise where they can be the artisan and they don't have employees. Other people say, I'm used to managing many employees. I find it energizing, invigorating. I love to hire and train, bring it on. So you can see I match according to what the person tells me. And there are many options and choices available.
Interesting. So let's say hypothetically, I go with the mom and pop. It's just now a pillar of the community and hiring the kids. What would be some of the things you would recommend, like pest control, a restaurant, et cetera, et cetera?
It could be something like pest control. It possibly could be a restaurant. My concern with that is I would want to ask if you have food experience. And if you don't, I would want to drill down a little bit further because many times people aren't aware of just how many hours that requires and the number of employees that they might need and also the financial requirements. So if I'm working with, let's say, someone who has been downsized and they're probably 50 plus, ideally, they may want to own a restaurant or a coffee shop, but they only got X weeks of severance and they're burning through capital. So we might look at it and take a different approach. We might say, let's get you into a service-based business so you can get in right away and you can start making money and build equity and establish your accounts, get known in the community. And later on in a few years, let's revisit things and possibly look at a restaurant or a coffee shop then when you have some of these things established and have more time to find that ideal location rather than being under the gun and possibly looking at something that wouldn't be ideal. The reference I like to make is when people buy a home. Many times that first home is known as a starter home. Mm-hmm. It may be smaller. It may not be in the ideal neighborhood, but you get a start and you fix it up. You improve it. You let inflation help you a bit. And then you may want to buy another home that is larger, maybe in a better school district, maybe closer to where your business is. And likewise with a business can be bought and sold. It is an asset. just like a home is an asset.
Interesting. Okay. The especially the bringing up a house that I figured out through talking through guests and reading different. Well, you can't see it's out of camera, but the different books. Is like when you buy a house, even if it's just you living in it, it is like buying a business kind of thing, because you have to make sure you have the money to pay it off. If you don't, like a business, the bank will come in and repo everything kind of thing.
Right. So likewise with a business, I look at matching and recommending businesses that would be affordable, where the person's skills can shine and where they're going to be successful. Of course, it is still up to them, but I'm not going to recommend something where they would be strapped financially and have to eat a diet of ramen noodles or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They also have to have a life, and a franchise company will want to make sure that they have money to not only support the growth of the business, but also to pay their personal bills, their rent, their mortgage, gas for their car, food on the table, those types of things as well.
That was actually one thing I was talking to a franchise owner. I think it was a Subway or like a 7-Eleven. And I was just talking to him. And I said, hey, so how did you guys pay yourself in the beginning when you weren't getting you weren't taking profits? Because you were barely, if not like negative kind of thing. And they're like, oh, we just gave ourselves a salary kind of thing. We're just a flat rate or whatever. The business had to pay us that. But they're like, once we got to the point, we just flipped the legalness. And now we just take whatever the profits are. I'm like, oh, you can do that? I didn't know that.
Sure. Many times people will start with a marginal income and they reinvest back into the business. If we look at businesses that are membership models, such as a fitness business, for example, many times people love those types of businesses because they know where their break-even mark is, and it might be X number of members. And with X number of members, their costs are covered. So as they grow beyond that break-even point, a great portion of those membership fees drop to their bottom line. So it becomes very profitable.
It does. Yeah. And that's where I was just confused, because they were working like the one thing I thought was interesting is that they were working in their shop, because I knew another guy when I was doing martial arts with my instructor. He just bought a Subway, paid for the remodeling, hired a crew and everything. He was there for like the first week, just to make sure it didn't like flop. And he was running a lot of promotionals too. But then I've never seen him since. Like he never shows up anymore.
He may simply be managing the manager, and that is an option. We call it manager-run franchises.
Okay.
Many times that's what you'll see when you have multi-unit owners, because it's difficult to be in many places. So if a person has 10 locations, or let's make it simple, let's say 5 locations, they may visit one location each day of the week, or they may simply have meetings and calls with those managers to make sure that they're running it properly with periodic visits, depending upon their level of expertise and how they have developed their managers.
Okay. I kind of figured that at a young age that because when I talked to him, he was a very successful investor in like franchise and all this different stuff. But he's like, yeah, I have like 45 units. At the time, I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know what that meant. Now I'm like, oh, yeah. Hearing from you, it's like he was managing the managers.
Right. Many times people don't start off with 45 units.
No.
They will dip their toe in the water first, learn it, make sure they're successful, and then grow and expand from that.
He mainly, before it was a problem with Jared, he was a Subway franchise owner. And that's where he told me, he's like, some of them, he's like, I maybe visit them once a year, because he is like, I have them all over the States.
And many times with successful franchisees, they will have the opportunity to buy additional units. So there are some franchise companies that when a business comes up for sale, it never goes on the open market, so to speak. Other franchisees say, oh, I would like to expand there, or I'm ready to expand, or I've got great skills and I think I could turn this average producing location into a high performing location. Let me go.
So then they just pay
we'll see that.
So they just pay whatever the fee is in between and then they acquire it?
Usually if someone is selling the business, there are formulas that they will look at. So they will look at the revenue that they are generating. And many times it's a multiple of that revenue or of that EBITDA. Okay. And that will vary usually depending upon the industry. So there are some guidelines there. And keep in mind, as the business owner, they are taking money out of the business. But when it comes time to sell, they also have that asset that they can sell to, which is a great position to be in.
Right. Because if you own multiple franchises under one title, when the people go to buy it, it's like, well, if you're buying this one, sorry, you're buying like 3 others too. So you're going to have to give me X amount of money.
Sure. And sometimes, again, depending upon the exit strategy, a person, if they're a multi-unit owner, they may sell them all at once, or they may sell one a year for the next X number of years, looking at tax ramifications. Mm-hmm. So again, they've got options of how they want to do that.
Right. Yeah. If you sell too much too quick and it goes into your personal funding, that's going to be an interesting conversation with the IRS.
Well, it could be. And also when I'm working with a candidate, sometimes I have the option to present both a new franchise where they would start from scratch or an existing, a resale. And there are pros and cons to each. So that's another little twist to looking at becoming a business owner.
Go into that more. So what it would be like, let's say the pros and cons of a new and the pros and cons of an existing or used business kind of thing.
Sure. Well, with a new business, you get to hire the people, develop it. If you make any mistakes, they're usually small mistakes. You're learning as you're growing. There is a great deal of pride of ownership as you go through it. With an existing franchise, you know what it's already doing, but you may not know how that owner got there. Certainly one of the advantages of buying a franchise resale is that as the new owner, you would still go to training versus an independent business. Many times the person will sincerely say, I will train you. But if they've had the business for 10 years, they probably don't remember what it was like starting off. Even if they want to tell you all those things, they simply don't remember. So when a new owner goes to training, they're getting all of that information and hopefully nothing is forgotten. So that's a huge benefit. Also, if the existing owner, they may simply be ready to retire and sell the business. Other times they may sell because they weren't as strong as a business owner as they would have liked, or they took their eye off the ball. Let's say maybe they golfed simply too much and they may say, you know what, I thought I had the skills for this, but maybe I didn't do a good enough self-assessment. Maybe it's time to sell this business and do something else. So that could also be a possibility.
That's interesting. Yeah, like I went fishing once and it was deep sea. This one guy was sitting there with his big hat and all that. And he mentioned something to the captain, and the captain's like, are you ever going to go back to work? And he's like, it's fine. So I asked him later, I was curious, I was just like, what do you do for work that you don't have to go to work? He's like, I own a water restoration company. He's like, I have like 10 crews right now on a job. And he's like, and I have 3 different franchises and they all run in. I get my small percentage. So he's like, I'm at the point it pays more to fish.
Well, he's in a very privileged position. He obviously worked hard and trained his crews well. And that's another type of franchise is emergency services. And many times people like those businesses because they're pretty much recession resistant.
Yeah.
If you put in a load of laundry and the water hose comes loose or it cracks, and water's all over your floor, usually you're going to have that handled. Or if there is a kitchen fire, you're going to have someone come in and deal with the smoke and the problems with that. So that's another type of franchise. And many times they have relationships with the insurance agencies. They have all the forms that work. They will have preferred vendors. You may be able to lease the equipment and get it at better rates. So there's lots of advantages. And again, another industry that may not be sexy or have the cachet, but is a very strong essential service.
Is the emergency restoration business?
Yes, yes.
Good.
And what's interesting is when you talk to some of the owners right now, the ones that I talked to had very good years because, believe it or not, people were cooking more and there were more kitchen fires.
I'm not surprised.
So that's kind of funny how there are always some ways that some people can benefit. It can be a terrible time for others, and yet there are some businesses that provided those needed services.
And it's good for them. Yeah, it was just when I was talking to the guy, I was like, oh, lucky you, like you did all this. And he's like, oh no, kid. He's like, 8 years of sheer hell. He's like practically living off rice and beans. He's like, now I get to relax.
Well, 8 years would be a very long time to get up and running. I don't know how many people would do that.
Well, no, he built it from the ground up. He didn't buy a franchise. That's where he said, I built it from the ground up. I built my customer base. He's like, now he's got to the point where like my crew can do their own thing. They got their own stuff. And he's like, and 2 other people I knew wanted in on the same business, same title. He's like, so now they just have to pay me whatever percentage a year.
Yeah.
And I'm
kudos to him, right?
Right. I was like, well, hey, at least it succeeded kind of thing. And he's like, yeah, we're at that point. It's too big to fail.
Well, I hope he continues to do well. And I hope he continues to have hobbies that he can also have a life and enjoy it.
Right. This has been an absolute pleasure and honor. I don't know how long I got you, so I'm assuming like an hour-ish.
Yes, I think we're about 50 minutes or so.
Okay, cool. Then I got 3 going out questions for you.
Okay.
So during the lockdown times of COVID, other than work, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy?
There are a couple things that I am doing. One of them is I'm on a running streak.
Okay.
So I am on day 466 of running minimum of a mile a day, every day.
Nice.
I try to do minimum of 20 miles a week. My strategy is I run 6 miles on Saturday, 4 on Sunday, and then just 2 miles each day, Monday through Friday, gives me my 20 miles for the week.
Oh, wow.
Last year, I ran 1,300, which was the second highest mileage amount that I've run. But I like having the consistency. I like listening to podcasts during that time. I like that runner's high that I get. That's also awesome. Have become this amateur nature photographer. So as I'm out running, I'll see some attractive flowers or trees or whatever, and I will take pictures of those and post them. And that has blossomed into a hobby, if you will.
That's a fun hobby, though.
It is a very fun hobby. And I always have my phone along to track my mileage and my pace. And so I simply hit the camera button and shoot away. And then many times hit delete after too.
It's like too many of the good flower. You got to just down to 2 of them only.
Yes, it's easy to go a little nuts when it's a digital photograph.
You're like below angle, above angle, side angle.
Yes. You have no idea. That's very true.
So the second question is, someone aspiring to be like you, a very successful woman, helping other entrepreneurs, happy life. What are some tips, tricks, and advice you would give them to achieve what you do?
First of all, know yourself.
Okay.
And think of your skills and where you would like to go. I believe too many times we underestimate what we're capable of. So set goals not only for the week, the month, the year, but also look at setting goals for the decade. So we're at 2021. Many times people will set a goal for a year and they may hit that, but when they look at a goal for the decade, it may not be big enough. So look at setting some big goals and then chunking them down so you can accomplish them and know how you can do that step by step. Just like with a franchise investigation, we take people through a process. I somewhat take them by the hand, if you will, and we go through it step by step. And if they are interested and matches what they're learning, they continue to learn more and continue to learn more. So awesome. I look at it and I believe that opportunities abound if we will just open our eyes and look at what is all out there.
Like the flowers you take photos of.
Like the flowers I take photos of that people chuckle about. Yes. Oh, it's Diane with another flower of a sunflower with a bee. Not just a plain sunflower, but it has that bee.
So then my third one is, where can everyone contact you?
Sure. Happy to answer that question. The easiest way is my website is dianepleuss.com. I'm associated with FranChoice, so you can also go to the franchoice.com website, or if you want to be sophisticated, you can go franchoice.com/D Pleuss. And my last name, Pleuss, is spelled P as in Peter, Leuss as in Sam. I'm also on LinkedIn and post there regularly, as well as some of the other social media as well. My direct phone number where people could call or text me is 925-642-9976.
Wonderful. That's awesome. And I have an automated email, so I'll send you a little thing and I will collect all that. Anything we didn't even list, just send them my way so everyone can go click in the description.
Sure. And the best email is dpleuss@franchoice.com.
I love how it rhymes.
I was fortunate.
Yes. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor. I appreciate your insights and just the time you gave me today.
Well, Josh, I appreciate being here. It's fun to chat with you, and there are many options available. I like to think of franchising as an alternative to traditional employment. We're taught growing up to get a good education, get a good job, and you'll be taken care of. But that is no longer the case. We have to manage our own careers. And right. Part of that management could include a franchise. It is a very interesting option and alternative.
It really is.
And can also be lucrative as well.
I would say it's, especially with, like we were establishing earlier, with all the connections with the franchise.
Right.
Like it's one of those, you just got to make sure everyone knows you're around and you're good to go.
Well, some people would say it's not quite that simple.
That's very oversimplified, but yeah.
It's oversimplified, but it does give you a tremendous head start.
It does.
And a vested partner, because they want you to succeed.
Right. And
another nice thing, if you will allow me one more comment, okay. Sometimes when I work with salespeople, it can be a dog-eat-dog environment that if one person succeeds, it means the other person doesn't. With a franchise, you and I could both be in the same franchise system, but I'm going to help you and you'll probably help me. And both of our businesses, both of our ships will rise. So that tide can help everyone. And people love that. They come out of corporate competitive environments and they say, I love that I can help, that I can share what's working. I love that I can learn from someone else. So they greatly appreciate that camaraderie and that community.
And that's right there, priceless, because the amount of people you can call upon is wonderful.
Yes.
So thank you again. Been an absolute pleasure, and stay safe. Don't run too hard now in the future.
I won't. Thank you very much, Josh.
Bye-bye. Well, congratulations. You made it to the end. You're a awesome person. Not many make it here. So, being the awesome person that you are, can you do me one more awesome favor? Can you rate and review this on whatever podcast services you're using? If you do it on Apple and you leave an actual written review, I have a thing on my website. I will take your written review and post it for all to see. Congratulations, you're permanently sealed on my site. Otherwise, I am trying to do YouTube more and live streaming. I will try to put as many of the YouTube links in the description of the show as I can. So give your boy some extra help over on YouTube. Watch my videos. I just mute it and change the channel, change the window or something. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for being awesome, and see you next time.